How are you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, we're going to have a good episode here. This is an episode that kind of shows us how innovative inmates can be, even in the most restrictive of environments. We're going to be talking about inmate manufactured weapons. We're going to have our expert Russ Hamilton on. We're going to show you some pictures of some weapons that Russ has found in his career working for the CDCR, and we're going to hear the stories behind it, hear how some of these weapons were made, and I think it's just a great way to get an understanding of the dangers that are in our profession. Again, even in the most restrictive environments, that's when the inmates become even more innovative, which means that we have to become more resourceful. Now, guys, the show is sponsored you by three entities. We have American Military University. If you guys get a chance, please check out American Military University. It's a great college, good online school. If you're looking to get that degree, seek higher education, trust and believe American Military University is your choice. Trust me, guys. They're very supportive of what we do in Tier Talk, very supportive of the corrections profession. We also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. Also, check out their YouTube channel, guys. They got content that we do for them as well. A lot of good information that we provide for their channel. And we also have Shea USA. So that's CEIA. That's how you spell it, but it's pronounced Shea USA. Shea USA is the world leading weapon, cell phone, and contraband detection system manufacturer for corrections. For more information, contact Joe Vasquez at 440-561-7615. He's a subject matter expert. He's passionate about our industry, and he will take good care of you. It's great that we actually have them as a sponsor because their equipment would be hopefully maybe going off when inmates have these type of weapons that we're going to be showing you shortly. Also, guys, don't forget the link to Inmate Manipulation Decoded is in description if you guys looking for a good book. It's a good book to read, very informative. And again, you can find that at Amazon. Link for that is in the description. I have another book coming out hopefully next year called The Correctional Daily Reader. I'm about 1/3 of the way through. Still got another 2/3 left, but it's a lot of work, but again, step by step. That's all it is. Step by step. I can't look at everything that's ahead. I just got to be happy for what I'm completing on a daily basis. It's a big commitment. All right, guys. And here he is, the man of the hour, Russ Hamilton. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. How's it going?
Good, Russ. You mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Not at all. Of course, my name's Russ Hamilton. I am a retired and former sergeant with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I also was a senior correctional officer for a juvenile detention facility. I now work in the private sector for a private company that does reentry and rehabilitation work with a local probation department and a local jail where I am the case manager.
All right, now, guys, along the way, when we show you some of these inmate manufactured weapons, Russ is going to share a story, but more importantly, he's going to provide tips along the way. This is why we listen to those with experience, because when you listen to those with experience, then you yourself get to get some tips or some knowledge that I'm sure, Russ, it took you, 27, 28 years to get this type of knowledge?
Yeah, and it continues to evolve, though. It doesn't stop just because I'm out of that part of the game. I still listen to people. I still take in knowledge and expertise from other people that have done the similar job, so I can pass it on to all of you.
Right. And guys, just so you know, guys, when you're at a correctional facility, if you start seeing these weapons evolve, so they go from plastic to metal, you guys got to get on point, because the first thing we look at when it comes to inmates just collecting weapons, first thing we look at is frontline complacency. Sad to say, but it's true. If inmates are collecting a lot of weapons, the first thing we look at is frontline complacency. Are you doing your integrity checks? Because trust and believe, let's say inmates are taking stuff from the fences. If you guys are doing those integrity checks every day, or every time an inmate uses those areas, we start to nip it in the bud instead of waiting however long, and all of a sudden it's too late. It's all across the compound. And again, Russ, a lot of these inmate manufactured weapons probably could have been prevented if we did our integrity checks. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's different layers to what we're doing. You have to make sure, we used to have, the bar checks with axe handles in some of the areas that I used to work originally when I started at San Quentin. So all of those things to make sure that things aren't missing, to make sure that people aren't cutting through security barriers, to make sure that, we're doing our checks with regards to our shadow boards and, accounting on inventories for, other tools and other pieces of equipment. It just makes it that much easier to not have to go re-find that stuff after they take it. Because sometimes once it's gone and it's gone, you look for it, but you don't necessarily ever find it again. And those are what nightmares are made of for guys like me that spent so much time inside those, fences and walls.
And guys, shadow boards are great too, because that kind of gives you an instant visual. And right off the bat, like, oh, something's missing. And then you can get right on it. Because that's the key with this, guys. The key is how fast can I get on it? So again, if you're doing the integrity checks and something's missing, well, if you did the one before and it wasn't missing, and now it's missing now, you kind of know, okay, well, what inmates were in there just now? These group of inmates. Okay, guys, let's get in. Let's do some searches. Because at that point, like Russ said, you got to stop it from being spread around. That's the key. So the faster you can get to it, the faster you can pinpoint when it happened, the faster you kind of know where it possibly could be. I think that's the biggest thing too, guys, is when you do your integrity checks, just make sure you're doing them after each and every use. Don't just wait till like the end of the day or the end of the week and all of a sudden, oh yeah, there's pieces missing. And it's like, well, I don't know how long they've been missing for. When was the last time we did an integrity check? And when you do those integrity checks, guys, they should be logged and you should commit to 100% effort, because we're trusting you to let us know, was it there when you went there? Okay, it was. So it's not there now. That's fine. These last inmates that were in the wreck at that point were these group of inmates. So therefore, let's go check out these group of inmates, because if they said they were taking a piece of the fence, well, we know it could only be these group of inmates because you checked before and you noticed that there wasn't anything missing. All right, so let's get this going, Russ. Are you ready, Russ?
I'm absolutely 100% ready, Anthony.
You're gonna share some stories?
I'm gonna go all out on this one and kind of let loose. I'm normally kind of a little bit staid on, telling war stories and incidents that involved myself, but I'm gonna try and make an exception this go round.
Let me push this back a little bit, and let me bring in the first one. Okay, Russ, here it is.
All right, so this is a great one, and it actually has a really fun story behind it, because I know most people that I've showed this to, they look at it for a second, they say, oh yeah, that's an inmate manufactured tattoo gun. No, it's not. This is something much more interesting. I had this particular inmate who was very good at fixing things, and this was his hustle, actually, and he actually made a soldering gun with a rheostat in it, so he could, up and down the amount of heat on it. And what he would do is he would fix people's radios and TVs and other electronic gizmos that they can have in prisons, especially on some yards. And so he was just really great at it. If you look there on the left, those are a set of really teeny tiny screwdrivers that he had made. And I could see burn marks on them. So I knew that he had smuggled them out of industries, because it was obvious that he put them on a grinding wheel. And there's other things that we don't want inmates putting on grinding wheels, right? The fact that he was able to get them out and they were pretty small, maybe that meant that nothing big came out of there, but we could never really be sure after that. But this same guy, one thing that he did was they sold these hot pots in Canteen, and he had got a bunch of the hot pots together, and we used to have these cookie sheet beds, bunk beds, and he took and he attached these to the bottom of this bed, and it got all the paint scraped off real nice. And what they would do at nighttime and in the morning is they would cook flapjacks on there. They would cook sandwiches. They would cook eggs that they'd smuggled out of culinary and all kinds of things. And so this is the kind of guy, although all of this stuff is kind of fun to talk about. You don't ever know what else he might be doing, what kinds of things he might be making for people, what kinds of nefarious activities that he could be up to that could negatively impact the safety and security. But this was a good find. I managed to take this particular soldering gun of his off, as well as all of his little tools, took his little hustle away. Sorry for him, but that's the way it is. You can't allow them to conduct this kind of business with these kinds of items. It's just not safe.
Now, Russ, when you find an item like this that has so many different components, do you wind up after finding it like, okay, now we have to search these areas because this is where they could have got the stuff from?
Sometimes you can have an inkling as to where it came from. Sometimes these are things that have maybe been floating around and passed on from inmate to inmate, or an inmate finds where another inmate hid it years ago. So it's really kind of hard to tell. I do like to try and figure out where it did come from. And on the rheostat that he used to turn the electrical voltage up and down on that, I was able to determine that came from his own personal fan that he had, because that fan had been disassembled. Some of the other things, I suspect that they had come out of, had a vocations area where they did some repair things, and so I think they came out of there. There were a bunch of odds and ends wires. It was obvious that he had smuggled some of that, some of the solder that he was using out from that area of his job where they were doing the repair stuff. So, it just kind of depends. You want to track as much of it down as you can. Sometimes you're limited by time.
Yeah, and guys, sometimes those fans are very inexpensive, so it doesn't really cost much for the inmate to buy a fan and then rip it apart and take that engine out. So again, if it's not an expensive item, definitely be checking it, because trust and believe, even if it isn't expensive, but more likely if the inmate is spending, let's say, $15 on a fan, I don't think they're going to have any problems when they want to make something to rip that fan apart and grab that motor. All right, Russ, you ready?
Absolutely.
Another one.
Okay, I got to blow this one up. Okay, so this was two really good pieces that I found in the same day. So I was one short. I used to call it, whenever I found three significant types of contraband in one day, I called that my hat trick. So I was 1 point short on this, but I did manage to get these two weapons off the yard. The bottom one there, I don't know exactly where it came from, but I definitely identified it as having come from one of those folder files that you put in desks, because I found some of those actually in some of the outlying secretary offices. How it made its way into that particular, secure area, secure perimeter, not sure, but definitely knew that it came from there. The other one was more a piece of a wire that I think came off of a pan inside, or a wire whisk possibly, inside culinary. And they really hadn't done much with it yet. They had just started trying to tie a shoestring around it in order to give it a grip. I think that they were going to go back and work it some more. The tip probably needed a little bit more sharpening. But I was really proud that I pulled that one out, because that one came at the very end of the day after a lot of frustration and not being able to find anything.
Hey, Russ, I know these inmates, they got to make these weapons sharp. I mean, obviously maybe rubbing it on the floor or whatnot. Is there any tips for an officer to see if maybe they can discover it, why the inmate's making the weapon? Anything that they can hear or see?
Yeah, there's a couple things. Of course, if you hear a rhythmic scraping, but a lot of times there's a lot of background noise. I'll never forget one time though, at San Quentin, one of the lieutenants called a couple of the other officers into his office, which was actually a cell, and just told them to be quiet for a minute. And everyone in there could hear a rhythmic scraping. And after accessing the back area, was able to determine that two inmates in the cell directly above him were making shanks. The bad thing is those guys were porters for death row. They weren't actually on the row. They were actually lower level inmates. So that's one way to look. Also anytime that there's any kind of ground like cement or potentially asphalt, or asphalt mixed with cement, that kind of thing. It's a good area where they can take and they can sharpen things. Sometimes, we used to have huge yards, and so they would be full of grass and stuff like that. Well, sometimes, even though they're kind of deep, those rocks will work themselves to the top. And so sometimes they would manage to find some soil or some rocks that they could use. Also, in some of the industries areas, this was a real problem, is that they were able to smuggle back like some emery paper and things like that. In one case, we actually found one of those abrasive wheels. Don't know how they got that past the metal detector, but it was a big concern because that made it easy for them to sharpen something. And all they really have to do with something like that is attach it to one of those fan motors like we talked about before, and they have an actual cutting wheel. Well, what can you do with a cutting wheel? Well, yeah, you can sharpen weapons. You can also cut through security barriers and all kinds of stuff. So it's a big deal identifying these things, because it's not just about the ability to stab someone. It can be much, much more nefarious and serious.
This one actually looks like a poking weapon. I mean, obviously, you also have weapons that are meant to cut you open. Russ, would there be a difference between a shank and a shiv?
That's kind of just a colloquialism. I always found that shank and shiv were kind of used interchangeably by the inmate population, and therefore by us too. Most of the time, anything else that was a slashing type weapon, they would use it. They would call that a slasher, or they would call it, they had a specific one that we used to call a tomahawk, where they would break the head off of a disposable razor and bend back the little plastic ears. So you still had a little piece of plastic to hold on to, and you could still slash with it pretty good, And so, it just depended. And sometimes they would manage to, get a hold of razor blades or things like that. And they could embed them in things. They could embed them in little pieces of wood that I've seen before. I've seen them embed them in soap. I've seen them embed them in plastic. I've seen them actually take and, melt them into like a toothbrush head. And then they have a pretty good handle. And it's really wicked because it opens up, any vein, any artery that you hit. It moves skin and fat, and potentially could, even cut bone, depending on how hefty it was.
I mean, guys, these weapons, you're looking at weapons that can poke or stab, cut, blunt force trauma, like even just something as simple as a lock and a sock, or even projectiles. There were inmates that have been known to make bow and arrows. So again, I mean, no different than what you would see on the streets. You definitely find just a little bit more innovative, but the inmates will be able to make weapons that are very similar and obviously cause a risk to our staff safety. All right, Russ, what do you got here?
Yeah, that's just a close up of that soldering iron. You can see there in the middle where he put the rheostat in. And then it's just, easy for him to take. I put some of the solder that next to it there, and he could just put that next to the tip of it and repair radios.
All right, hold on. I'm going to keep that. So hold on. All right, we got this one.
All right, this one was good. This one, the top one there was part of a grill, I believe, inside culinary. I wasn't able to actually find exactly where it came from, but it was really shiny. Yeah, a rack like they fit inside an oven, to heat and cook meat on.
It's funny that you say that because obviously working as an officer in the kitchen, we had to always count the racks. Make sure you count the metal lines. If there's one missing, you got to report that immediately. So yeah, definitely something that they have access to in the kitchen.
And this other one below that there, what somehow, and I don't know where it came from, they had a great big carpenter's nail, and then they had taken and they had knocked all the guts out of that. You can see that it's a magic marker, and then they had managed to stick that through. And then they had just some other stuff that was actually wrapped up in a cloth that was with it that they could stuff in there to keep that nail from coming back through. because when I found it, the nail was actually inside of it, and the cap was just on it, and it was hidden in the guy's locker. And so, at first it just felt like an ordinary pin. But then when I started, looking at it, why does he have it wrapped up in this? It didn't make sense to me. Got a little more curious, started shaking it around, opening it up, and voila, it was pretty obvious what it was meant for.
And obviously the size of the handle and the strength of what's on the other end of it matters. So like a marker, I mean, a pen would probably be a little bit weaker. A marker would be a better option, I'm assuming. Probably definitely cause more damage. But would you agree that the better the handle, and then also like you mentioned, the nail having to be sturdy inside the marker so it doesn't get lost inside, because they're hoping to stab the person more than once, not stab them once and have the weapon break off, correct?
Yeah, and with something like that, it's a matter of the amount of force that you can generate. As you can see, even like on the upper one, that's a pretty good ball of material there that'll just rest inside the palm of your hand and allow you to grip it. And you can either traditional stabbing motion or turn it around and move that thing out, kind of. For lack of a better term, Wolverine style through your fingers, and be able to go at a guy's eyes and neckline with that.
What is that cloth? What is that on the bottom of that top?
That cloth is just bed sheet. They took bed sheet and they wrapped it around until it was that thick, and inside of that there's a loop of that metal material, and they tied it to that metal material, and then they just twisted it around that over and over and over again, so that they would have a way to generate that force while they're doing the stabbing action.
So are bed sheets common for handles?
I would say that it's probably the most common material that there is. Probably next in line is sometimes if they manage to, steal tape from somewhere. I've seen shoestrings used a lot. It's just, kind of dependent on what they have. Old T-shirts, blankets, anything that'll pad that handle and make it thick enough that they can manage to get more force generation on the tip of that thing.
So what are the officers looking for? Ripped sheets, ripped. Wow, that's tough. That's two tough words to say. I didn't realize that. Are the officers looking for ripped sheets or ripped blankets?
Yeah, you can. It's almost impossible to keep up with that thing based on the ratio of inmates to officers. One thing that you can do with something like that is obviously, if you're lucky enough to find the weapon early on, you might luck out and find a forensic rip that matches exactly something else that they have in their possession that might lend itself towards some kind of constructive possession. The other thing that you can do is if you're willing to just go in there, and this is hard to do because sometimes you don't have the resources to do it. If you make sure that you're beefing these guys for ripping sheets and charging them for it, and by charging I mean replacement of the sheet, and it's $2.50 or whatever, you could make it a nuisance for them to do it that way. But there's nothing really stopping them from stealing someone else's sheet. There's nothing stopping them from stealing a T-shirt. There's nothing stopping them really from using their own T-shirt that they bought, say, in commissary. So it's very hard to do. There are some ways that you can use it, like I said, with regards to constructive possession and forensics on something like that. But it's kind of too hard to just go at all the time.
Yeah, guys, if you do see a pattern, let's say this one inmate just constantly has those ripped sheets or whatever. Usually people get stuck in their familiar patterns. I mean, don't get me wrong, they evolve as well, but in desperation, they may go back to what's easier for them. If they have a developed pattern, then we just have to be heavy with our searches on them. If this is someone that has a habit of making weapons, then, we should be searching them a little bit more often than we would the rest of the general population or whatever population you're dealing with. All right. This is a unique one. This is a syringe, which is still a weapon in my eyes.
Yeah. So one thing that we tended to look at a lot is is our diabetic population. So them being diabetic doesn't mean that they're going to be kind to their body and stop using things. It also doesn't mean that they're not going to have a hustle and try and rent out rigs. So what tends to happen in order to make these rigs harder to find is once they smuggle that needle out of medical, and one way that they'll do that is they'll pretend to drop it in the sharps container and drop something else like a pen. And if the nurse isn't watching, if the officer isn't watching, they hear it, they assume that the inmate dropped it. If they're not being searched well on the way out, maybe the inmate has an opportunity to actually get the cap on and hoop that. But once it makes it out there to the yard, they're not going to risk it being found. So what they generally do is they cut it down. They cut the plunger, they cut the barrel. Sometimes they reattach that needle to a much smaller piece of rubber tubing or something like that they can hide and be sure that they're going to have use to it. And the way that they have use to it also, it involves, what's their drug of choice, but it also depends on whether or not they're actually using or they're going to rent it out. Because people that are out there hitting drugs, if they don't have a way to deliver that system, they still have to have a way to rent something out, pay somebody for it. These are all common hustles that they do all the time. I had one situation slightly related to this one, not in the exact same place, but on another yard, where I was getting on the officers who were letting inmates into this old abandoned dorm that was part of that yard. And these were the clerks and everything else. And so they were just letting these guys go in there and use the shower, use the facilities. I said, you can't do that. They're going to be back here doing wrong stuff. So I got him out of there and went back in there the first day I was there as a sergeant. And sure enough, found a syringe right there. Went back, found obvious, video of these guys sticking their arm through the window. And so they were paying for the use of the rig and for the dope at the exact same time.
Well, I will tell you guys something right now. Obviously, you should be keeping sharp counts. It should be your supervisor, maybe complemented with somebody from medical. You kind of partner together because it's an inventory that both parties are responsible for. Ultimately, medical has their level of responsibility over that, but then custody oversees that level of responsibility. So I believe the sharp count should be done. Ultimately, a final count should be done by some supervisor. You could have your front line as well, but I would prefer the supervisor just to have that secondary level. And also, guys, if you found something like that, and let's say administration, gets a wind of it, they got to have medical at the table on this one. We got to be sitting together and discussing like, hey, guys, look what just happened. Look what we just found. Because I don't think in some cases there may be some people from medical that may not know how serious this is. So to bring them to the table and just kind of show them the ingenuity behind an inmate that is jonesing for a drug or has the ability to sell stuff. And I will tell you another thing. That's why for the inmates that work the hospital porters, you don't want them to have any type of drug charge in their history, whatever brought them in. You don't want them to have any drug charges you want no charges while they're in the prison, because I'm not going to say it's 100% because nothing's 100%, but that's one of the markers that you look for that says, nope, I don't care if you had a drug charge that was dismissed. You are not working the infirmary. Now, I'm not saying that it can't be other ones, but having said that, I just think that's an obvious marker. And when you're reviewing for those job placements for infirmary, one of the things you don't want in the infirmary next to a sex offender as well is you don't want somebody who has a drug history. Would you agree with that, Russ? At some point, right?
Yeah, but that is going to be hard though. You might have to cut it back to that they don't have a history of it inside, any prison or jail facility. But all these guys, almost all to a one, are going to have some kind of drug charge on them. So it makes it really difficult to try and.
But where it is difficult, guys. Russ is 100%, accurate with that, but it is doable because we do it. But having said that, it makes it hard because even if you're lucky, because Russ does make a very good point here, even if you're lucky and find somebody, these porters should be rotated out every 6 months to eliminate undue familiarity. So again, you're right. Pickings could be slim already, and now you're looking to rotate them out. So having said that, it's like when this guy's ready to go, it's like, well, the only person I can swap him with is someone that may have had a drug history in the past. It's like, okay, well, now I got the drug history and I got the chance for undue. You know, what am I going to choose? All right, Russ, let's get to the next one. We did that one. Hold on one second. We got this one. That's a nice one, man.
Oh, yay. Okay, this one was a beauty. And okay, so anyway, one of the things that I do, or did, I should say, is I was always looking to, find STG affiliations with certain people. I had this one particular area that was really heavy under the influence of the Sureños and, more importantly, the Mexican mafia. And so I knew it was just a matter of time until something serious showed up there, because I knew that this one individual in there who was probably a shot caller was going to, have to have some heavy duty items in there, if for nothing else, for whatever dope that they might be moving or anything else on the yard. So I kind of scouted out the area for several days. It was maybe even a week or two, and I was just, watching for differences in the way they conduct themselves, differences in their behavior. Most importantly, though, is I was staying away from certain areas that I used to search all the time, because I thought that I could get them to fall into my lap, and I didn't have any way of controlling it, what other staff were doing, but I knew that they would be watching me, and so I made a good show of it, not searching a couple of areas that I thought were really good hiding areas. And so after about 2 weeks of this, I went back in and opened up this vent that was really tight and really hard to open. And I'd opened it before, but like I say, it had been a while. And sure enough, that's what I found inside. I'd been looking everywhere else, and so it was just kind of a trap and a setup on my part, because I had that reputation for finding stuff. And so they were nervous about having it in this particular area that they were in. And so I kind of lulled them into a false sense of security. And by doing that, I was able to get them to buy into the fact that, hey, look, he's not searching these areas. He's looking really slack these days. I don't know what exactly may have went through their head, but that was the sense I was trying to convey to them. So I was really proud. I mean, I was damn proud of getting that weapon out of there, because that wasn't just about searching or technique or reading body language. That was an actual psychological operation that came up pretty good for me, I thought.
Yeah, and that's a serious weapon right there. That's going to hurt you going in, hurt you coming out, and it's looks like it's light, so you're not just going to hit one time with that. You're looking at getting stabbed up 20, 30 times with that weapon. And again, that weapon's meant to, definitely get you on the way out as well. Again, guys, these are just some of the dangerous weapons that inmates can make. And again, is that wrapped with sheet?
That one is wrapped with sheet or t-shirt. I'm not sure which.
All right. And what was that made of again, Russ?
That was made out of steel. And that steel came out of part of a locker that I found that they busted out the back of it. And you couldn't see it. You had to pull it out. You had to pull it out away from the wall that it was on to see that was missing. But it was, I mean, like I say, that one's one that I'm super proud of, because to work that angle and figure out that those guys were, top of the food chain, at least for that yard, and so forth, and to get them to bite into that thing that I'm slipping, and they can hide a weapon in there, and I'm not going to find it. Yeah, I caught them slipping.
All right, I got. This is
okay. This is one of my favorite ones because of where we found it. This was me and a partner actually found this. Now you see the upper one there. That is a big, heavy duty piece of plastic that they beveled down. But the way that they cut it out is they took dental floss and they ran it down the side of this big, thick coffee cup. So it's one of those big, thick plastic ones that they had in all the chow halls. and they kind of cut it into its shape, and then they beveled it on its side, and then they wrapped it with cloth, right? And then the second thing down is a piece of brazing iron that one of the maintenance crews either brought in and dropped or something like that, and the other one is an intact syringe. I would almost never find them like this. This syringe was almost perfectly intact. It looked like they had bent it a little bit, maybe trying to work with it and get ready to cut it down. But that wasn't all that was in there, right? There were cell phones and chargers and all kinds of stuff. That's just three of the things that came from that allowed me to call it in my own mind what I said, is the hat trick, because I had two weapons. There's actually a third weapon in there not pictured, and the syringe. But the thing about this one is me and my partner. This is one of the few ones that I actually got only due to an inmate snitch, and he said that there was a vault in this area, but he wasn't specific, right? He just said there was a vault in that area, and so me and my partner, we went back and we looked and we left and we came back and we looked around some more, and I said, man, I don't see where it could possibly be. And so we started looking closer and closer and closer, and we were looking at these tiles in the shower area, right? And he looks up and he says, so is that grout in there or is that toothpaste? And so I got a little tool of mine that had a little paper clip on it, and I started scratching at it, and it was really, really soft. And I was going, that's not grout. It could be toothpaste. It could be tooth powder. Not really sure. And so I just, went all around it and stuff. And sure enough, the grout just came out. It was real easy. I didn't have to go back and forth or anything. And so then we're just looking at a tile, right? And so I grabbed a hold of that thing and I pulled and pulled, and I couldn't get it to move at all, And so my partner's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and he's like, well, what do you think? And so I said, well, I guess I'm either going to get in trouble or I'm not. And so I deployed my Monadnock expandable baton, and I broke the tile out. Guess I lucked out, because that's what was behind it. And it was in it was a huge cavern. I could reach my arm all the way back in there. How they were getting that tile in and out of there, I still was never able to figure out. But I figured out that, hey, that grout, it's really soft. So I'm just going to break that tile out, and it worked out good for me.
What about, I just sharing that story, what about if it was like there for a while and then maybe something happened and maintenance fixed it, and then maybe the inmate was an old-time inmate who said, hey, you know what, a long time ago, whatever, this stuff was up there, and the maintenance, redid the tiling or did something, and then it just wound up being there.
I don't think that it was there for very long, because one of the phones inside there had a charge on it.
Oh, that's right. You said you found.
Yeah. So, and at that time, in this particular area, we weren't getting too many phones yet. It was phones were few and far between. As a matter of fact, those might have only been like very early on in the whole phone saga, maybe the 10th or 15th phone that we ever found.
Oh man! And hey Russ, so the top one, that's made from the plastic cup, you said, correct? So that's going to be undetectable. Do you find that the plastic weapons are more dangerous than the metal more dangerous than the plastic, or obviously they're both dangerous, but if an inmate was going to choose between, I was going to say, if an inmate had to choose to be effective and they wanted to choose between a plastic or a metal weapon, are they going for the metal?
Metal all the way. I would say because metal can go much thinner, and it means that you can get a puncture on an organ that counts, such as the heart, the pericardial sac, the lungs, the liver, and the kidneys, which are all deadly shots, right? Plastic is just kind of one of those things. Yes, you can defeat the metal detector with it. Yes, it's easier to get a hold of. I've seen damage done with plastic shanks, but by and large, it's the metal that you want. Like if you look at that little piece of brazing rod there, I know it's hard to see, but they had actually started sharpening it. And even though it looks small and like it couldn't do too much. It could, you could damage that pericardial sac and cause it to fill with blood and kill someone in pretty short order. Now, might it glance off of a rib because it's not that sturdy? Yeah, it could. You could put it in somebody's kidney, probably cause them to lose that kidney, maybe get an infection, maybe die. But metal that's just a little bit stouter than that goes a long ways towards, being a better weapon overall.
Yeah, wow. All right, now, Russ, we got this.
Okay, so this was one of my hat tricks, right? The one on top there was very similar to the other weapon. They had cut that out of the side of the cup using that dental floss technique that I talk about. It just, they go so fast that it melts that plastic out of the way and just leaves like a little bit behind, and then they can just break it out. And then that's wrapped again with sheet or some kind of t-shirt material. So that was all good. The one below that was part of a broom handle. And what happened is they had actually cut part way through it, and then just they take and they break it over their knee, and it causes it to just get into that. Now hadn't worked on it much. They were going to work on it more. All of these came out of a ceiling that was made to look like it was still in place and still intact. And so I managed to pull that out of there. The bottom one there, they took that from we used to have a bunch of bed springs in this area until we replaced them all with the cookie sheets. And that piece of metal is wrapped with the sheets or t-shirt material again, and then bound on the outside of that with shoestring. It looks a little twisty or whatever, which would probably, slow it down going through you. But you know what? If that's hitting your face or your neck, it could still ruin your day and possibly ruin your life. So all of these, taking them out in one fell swoop from one place, and doing all of that, by the way, based on body language that these inmates were giving off in the area where I found this. I felt like it was a good day.
Yeah, guys, broomsticks, mops, those are obviously controlled items. If by any chance, you're missing one, you need to report that immediately. And that should be something that you should be able to find pretty quick, because when you lend out a controlled item, I'm assuming you're taking the inmate's ID. You're not allowing them to pass it around, and you're holding that inmate responsible for that controlled item. And then if, let's say, you have a broom that breaks, that becomes controlled trash. You call your supervisor or call somebody immediately to get that out of the unit. That does not go to a porter to throw out. That goes directly through custody's hand and nobody else's. That means that literally goes from custody's hand all the way outside of the control compound and into the trash to be picked up immediately. If, again, it's not trash that a porter should ever get their hands on. That is controlled trash. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, we used to call that hot trash, and it could consist of lots of things. I mean, it could be like old little motors that they were using for their tattoos. It could be those broom handles like that. A lot of times, we, regardless of how hard we tried to hit it, we would find old, porn or something like that. And you didn't want to just, hey, you guys wheel this big cart of crap away. No, you got to take the hot trash out and put it in a specific area and make sure that it makes it outside the institution. Otherwise, they have the potential to do things like this, make more weapons. And, it can be even something that would like help them. Like it used to drive me nuts that on some of our lower yards, they would have dental floss. And I'm just like, come on, man, they're taking the dental floss and they're cutting plastic with it. In order to make weapons, and you never know, how that's going to go for you.
Yeah, and obviously cutting plastic with dental floss takes some time, guys. So that's how patient these inmates are. Because
well, you know what, it can, but you'd be amazed at how quick that they can get it to go. We had a really large incident. I would say we probably had 150 inmates on our yard, all in either handcuffs or in plastic shackles. And we watched one of the guys roll over to another guy's feet, get his shoelace off, and cut through the plastic Ziploc ties in probably under about 20 seconds. So you never know. It's surprising. These guys, they practice stuff, and they get practiced at it, and so you'd be surprised how quick they can actually make something like that go.
Yeah, some of these inmates are allowed even to have plastic chairs in their cell, which I believe is a no-no because they can cut a piece of the plastic off by using dental floss or even a shoelace and get a nice little nifty weapon out of that.
Or they can sometimes on some of those things, while we got rid of some of our plastic chairs, is I showed them, you make a scoring mark, and then you take and you break it, right? And then it's the right shape, and then you take and you trace it onto the next part of the chair leg, and you break that one, and then you bind them together, and they're doubly strong. It's the same way as if you've ever seen them make it out of Lexan or plexiglass. All they have to do is score it and break it, and score it and break it, and they can make it as thick as they want, and then they can work on it and sharpen it from all angles and actually make a cylindrical one, which is a really nasty thing to encounter.
There's Russ history in the CDCR. Hey, Russ, what about this one?
This is one of my favorites, man, because once again, I'm working hard that day for a hat trick. And I'll never forget, man. I worked real hard, and I finally got those two pieces, and I got them out of an area right next to where I got the cell phone from. But anyway, I had managed to get those, and I was pretty tired and tuckered. But because I had two, I had to go for more because I'm greedy like that, right? And so the next area that I was in was a common area shower. And I walked in there, and there was an inmate, and I said, "What's up?" And right then, he got that deer in the headlights look. And I don't know if it's because I was an officer, or maybe, I'd had some prior dealings with him on some things. And sometimes they start to react to who you are instead of what you are, because you've taken a whole lot of dope and everything else from him. And he froze, and he completely lost it. And so I put him in handcuffs. I patted him down real good, didn't find anything. I figured anything that he had to be within 5 feet of him. So I limited myself to 5 feet. And the first thing I did was I looked up, and there was just like a little exhaust vent. I could see it had been messed with a little bit. And I opened that up, and inside was that cell phone. And so that gave me my hat trick for the day, and then I was happy, and I could go home.
That's a successful day for Russ Hamilton, guys.
It was a successful day for me. If I get that hat trick, it was a successful day.
All right, now we got this. This is from the filing cabinet, right, Russ?
Yes, and that is made of aluminum. And this one scared me pretty severely, because what happened is in this particular housing unit, they had like these 36-man dorms, and there was probably, I'm going to say, somewhere between 9 and 11 guys in the dorm that I recovered this from. And what happened is I would just go in and walk through and walk out, and not even necessarily search or anything like that, but I'm just checking on the temperature of things, as I like to call it, right? And I walked in and I walked through, and I stopped for a second because I felt it, it's those little hairs on my neck. And these guys, they're just like, looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and no one's saying anything. And so I immediately keyed the door and got out of there and called for backup. And from outside the door where I was safe, I was, yelling at those guys to stay down or whatever. And so we came in and we started conducting cuffing operations immediately. We started pulling them out, and I got back in there where 3 of the guys were underneath this vent. Of course, I couldn't put it on them, but I got up into this vent, and I looked, and this was diagonally in the vent. It should have been laying flat. It should have been up underneath the crease where no one could see it. But they got in a hurry. They got sloppy. because I startled them, and I was probably lucky to get out of there the way I did, with no puncture wounds, no hits or anything like that. But I knew immediately that they had a significant piece in there. So yeah, on that one, like I say, I was probably lucky to make it out of there without any puncture wounds and without getting hit. These guys were probably pretty serious about it, but they kind of gave away the game, so to speak, in a way that I was able to get out of there in time, get some reinforcements back, and put myself in a position to recover that. And as you can see, that's a really sturdy piece. It's long, it's pointed. They'd worked on it obviously for some time. Curiously enough, made completely out of aluminum, so it was really lightweight. And one of my favorite late career pieces, as it were. Not my best ever, but definitely one of the best that I've ever been able to take a picture of. Because all the pictures I have of my stuff are all my last 2 years, because the advent of cameras hadn't yet been invented when I first started.
Yeah, guys, like this is one of the things where we're very big on checking this as well. We check office areas, education, libraries, the chaplaincy area, whatever it is that has file cabinets, and you make sure you check to see if those file cabinets have it's the rack, technically, correct, Russ? It's what puts the folders or
yeah, the folders sit on top of them.
yeah, so yeah, you always got to make sure they're there because they do go missing, no different than the food service racks. This tends to go missing as well. You'll find that inmates do make a lot of weapons utilizing that. So that's a very good find. All right, Russ, we got this one.
Okay. Okay, through some of these, you're going to start to see a little bit of a pattern develop, in that the amount of aluminum that I was taking off of yards on any given day was really high, and it was really distressing. I don't know if you can see on the opposite side of this one, they had actually taped a little bit of metal, and on the other side of it, they put a magnet so that the magnet would hold it, because it was still, all of that's aluminum, right? So they fastened a little bit of metal to it so they could use magnets on it to hide this one up out of the way. This one, I believe, was hid up in up underneath a sink in a bathroom area, and I took it out of there, I think, like right after they put it up. Once again, this was one of those situations where just watching that, people were acting like they had weapons in the area, trying to move in on them, trying to see what we could do as far as pat downs, trying to see if we could locate things in an area. And sure enough, in this one, we came up. This one also ended up, we had about 15 to 20 drunk individuals in that area, and we had to take the area back by bringing in a team with some 40 millimeter firepower, and using a little bit of chemical agents, start cuffing operations. A couple of the guys plexed up. We had to take them down. Very, very dicey stuff, especially knowing that I just recovered this from an area, and these guys could definitely be holding more.
And Russ, same thing, file cabinet?
On this one, I'm not sure, because it was, as you can see, it's like really wide. And so I was never able to determine exactly where it came from. Like I say, it was just weird that I was having so much aluminum on the yard at this time. And so some of this stuff definitely from the file cabinet, desk drawer holder kind of thing. But this one was way thicker than normal, and I was never able to actually establish an origin for it.
And the handle though, what's that? Do you know?
That handle right there is all shoelaces.
All shoelaces. That's unique. All right, Russ, what about this one?
Oh, let me scoot in on this one for a little. Oh, this doesn't allow me to do that. My phone does, which I was on. This one, gosh, see, you see the pattern I'm talking about now, right?
Yeah.
and then all of these are aluminum. So this, can you read what that one says? Because I found a whole bunch that were kind of the same.
Yeah, if you give me a second. So wait, this one is well, is that probably still bed sheets?
That is actually on this one, as I recall, that was actually tape. It was some kind of white tape that they had found.
All right, so I
I'm
can read
having
out
I'm
for you
having a little
now.
bit of a hard time seeing it here because
Yeah, it
I'm on my.
says dorm 44 plumbing chase.
Okay, I remember this one now. This one this one they had taken and they had taped a piece of a metal to it, and then it had magnets on the back of it, and then it was sitting in there just like inside the chase where you couldn't see it, and I don't even know how they got it in there for sure. Because it was really tricky. I opened the chase by opening the lock because I had access to those keys on that day, and I was actually surprised that I found something like that. It made me think that someone in there either had fashioned a key or knew enough about picking locks that they could get into that. And I actually came back to that plumbing chase a few weeks later and found even more significant contraband in it, including more shanks. But this one was kind of unique in that if you see how it sharpened to a point there, the point was not only sharpened, but it was also beveled on all the edges. Double-sided dagger type, along with the beveling, so because of the beveling, it could also slash or cut. So this one, even though it's not very long or anything like that, a very, very dangerous piece.
Yeah, and guys, this is going to be the last one. All right, Russ.
Okay, so the two metal pieces on the right there, that's what we would call weapon stock. It doesn't look like much, but they could potentially fashion that into something. That came off of an electrical ring inside a cement wall. And what had happened was is they had just, I don't know if they had found it and it had been covered up by cement or what, because I was never able to establish exactly where it came from. But it's obviously that they worked on it until it broke. So I couldn't find exactly where it came from, but I knew that that was going to be used in the future because all of these things were also wrapped up inside a sock and made it nice and easy for me. But the other thing that you see there is another plastic shank. And that shank was a little bit different because it came from a mop bucket. So we give these guys stuff to clean, right? And we account for the stuff every day. But you know what? There's like some areas on these buckets and stuff where if you're not looking real close, they can clip things away. And what they had done, and I talked about this a lot, right? It was the old dental floss trick again. They managed to, get a hole in it or start from one edge, and they just, friction, friction, friction. It melts that, and that dental floss is really, really strong, guys. And then they just, shape it to what they want. Later on, they can come back. They could have added a handle. They could have beveled it a little bit. Typically, on one like that, that's that thick, a lot of times they'll split it in two and make two shanks, and get different handle material for it. So there's a lot of different things that they can do for that. And at that particular time, it was down on an end of one yard where we were having a lot of gang activity and a lot of problems between the blacks and the Southsiders.
And again, guys, a mop bucket being a controlled item. Hey, Russ, let me get both your eyes. I see one eye there. Move back a
Oh,
little bit. We zoomed
oh,
in. Nope, the other way.
there we
Yeah.
go. All
And all
right.
right, guys. So it was just wanted to hear some stories, share some tips. I know there's a lot of value here in what Russ shared today. I mean, guys, this is only a small fraction of what Russ has discovered in his career. But we thought that we could revisit this topic once again. But we haven't done a topic like this for over a few years now, so we wanted to revisit again just to kind of keep people on their toes. And for us, as I said, when weapons are evolving and they are increasing at your facility, we got to go back to that front line and just make sure they're not being complacent in their measures, because each one of these weapons could have found their way into one of us. And that's why it's so important we find it. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, you know what? Never underestimate, just how innovative these inmates can be. I talked about that one inmate, and I told you about, how he made a grill out of, the bed cookie sheet and his hot pot items, and how he had made a soldering iron and things like that. Well, there are things that are equally innovative that can kill and hurt us. I've seen and actually been hit by projectiles from a blowgun. I've seen and recovered an actual slingshot made from newspaper and the little rubber things that are inside the chonies, the boxer shorts. They can take those and they get one little string of them out at a time and then weave them all together. And I've seen them actually make ones that will shoot small arrows, or you can put just a really sharp paper clip on that with a little bit of feces or something like that, and cause somebody to have a horrible infection. There's things that I've seen that are even a lot more creative than that. Probably the one of the best weapons I ever saw was two handles that were wrapped and attached to a piece of concertina wire in the middle, and that would have easily taken someone's head clean off. I didn't find that one personally, but I did see that one at San Quentin. And so, always try and imagine, if you were an inmate, how would you pull off making a weapon? How would you hide it? How would you use it? Why would you put it where you put it? Is it for some future unknown use, or are you going to use it tomorrow? All of those things stack up and put you in a position to be able to recover more than your fair share. Just doing your assigned 3 searches for the day doesn't make you a contraband hound. Being able to put yourself in the position where you can recover something day in, day out over the period of a career is what makes you a contraband hound. My last day, and I worked all day for it, believe me, my very last day, I found a shank. So you guys can do this stuff too. Just stay after it, take some of this stuff to heart, figure out why inmates do what they do.
And guys, just so you could see it, this is an inmate made bow and arrow. And it's at the Kingston Museum right now, but that's made from the innovation of inmates. And guys, as we mentioned before, it doesn't matter how restrictive the environment is. Inmates will become more innovative the more restrictive it gets. So, all because you're in a high maximum security facility, you're probably going to have the most innovative inmates.
Yeah.
Again, go ahead, Russ.
If we're going to add one more thing, one of the most innovative things that I saw or was ever introduced to was in a very restrictive housing unit, the Adjustment Center at San Quentin, where one of our inmates had managed to make a hiding spot behind his sink. And inside of that, he had actually made a little miniature arc welder, and he was able to manufacture some hacksaw blades. So figured that out. What were those hacksaw blades going to be used for? Well, they were probably going to be used not to make weapons, but to cut through bars and to take people hostage and kill officers. Fortunately, it didn't turn out like that. But there's no stopping these guys. There's no telling sometimes where they get this stuff from. And in the end, it doesn't do any good to identify where they got it from if people are already dead from it. So watch yourselves and think and imagine. Imagination is a powerful weapon.
Yeah, guys. And as I said, I mean, the more innovative the inmates are, the more resourceful we have to be. We have to evolve. So again, and on another note, they may get us the first time, but if we know that they're being innovative and these are tools that they're using, then we cannot allow them to get us the second time with those same type of tools. So as always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.